The U.S. military has halted its ground operations against Islamic State in eastern Syria. In a statement, the Pentagon said the move was due to the Kurdish forces in the area shifting their focus from fighting terrorists to countering a Turkish offensive. We now cross live to RT Samira Khan in Washington, D.C. for more. Now, Samira, could you tell us more about this latest development?
Well, according to U.S. officials, U.S.-backed ground operations against Islamic State remnants in eastern Syria have been put on hold. Now, that's because Kurds who had spearheaded combat against extremists have shifted to a separate fight with Turkish forces in Afrin. Check out what the Pentagon had to say.
Some fighters operating within the SDF have decided to leave operations in the middle Euphrates River Valley to fight elsewhere, possibly in Afrin. They're not fighting ISIS anymore, and that basically meant that they're not taking territory back from ISIS as quickly as they had been in the past.
Kurds have been Washington's key allies in the fight against ISIL and one of the most effective forces combating extremists in the region. But the Pentagon has already admitted that the potential costs of their distraction from the ISIS fight is severe. But the Kurdish region of Afrin in northern Syria has become a new geopolitical pivot point in this conflict. Now, Turkey launched an offensive in Afrin in January to expel Syrian Kurdish forces, which it sees as a terrorist group, and as an extension of a Kurdish insurgency at home. Now, this is all while the U.S. says that they are separate from the Kurdish fighters within the U.S.-backed Syrian Democratic Forces. Well, the violence in the region continues. Let's take a quick look. For weeks now, Defense Secretary Jim Mattis and other U.S. officials have called Turkey's operation a distraction from the anti-ISIS campaign.
What is going on in Afrin is taking away from the fight against ISIS. It is a distraction, as Secretary Mattis had called it. It is certainly not helpful to have people take their eye off the ball of ISIS. We've talked about that numerous times before.
However, it seems that for Kurdish forces, the fighting in Afrin is more than just a distraction. The Pentagon said that although ground operations against ISIS in the Euphrates River Valley have been temporarily suspended, U.S. airstrikes against ISIS holdouts are continuing. Now we just have to wait and see how this will affect the battle against ISIS in Syria and whether or not this will extend U.S. operations in the country.
All right, RT's Samira Khan for us there in Washington, D.C. It's going to be interesting to see how this whole thing plays out. Thanks for being with us. All right, Daniel McAdams, Executive Director at the Ron Paul Institute, thinks that the U.S. alliance with the Kurds is unlikely to survive at this point.
Well, it reminds me of the old saying, it's better to be the enemy than the ally of the United States, because if you're the enemy, they may try to buy you, but if you're the ally, they certainly will sell you. And that certainly seems like what they're doing with the Kurds. Perhaps the Kurds are understanding that they will be sold out. They were sold out at Raqqa as well, and they will be sold out in the eastern part of Syria where the U.S. is operating, and they're coming to the aid of their allies. Does the U.S. hope that the Syrian government gets further drawn in to the fight with the Kurds against the Turks? Then the U.S. can swing back around and help its Turkish ally in fighting the Syrian government and the Kurds as well. Maybe that's the move. That would mean the big question mark is, what will Russia do in a situation like that? Talk about a disaster.